Welcome to DFC on the Green. I'm Jason Gilbo. With me is Chris Etherington, taking a look at the Travelers Championship on DraftKings this week. Following the U.S. Open, we were talking a little bit, a lot of stuff going on. Obviously, Koepka winning back-to-back titles. The whole Phil Mickelson incident was something that we were talking about a little bit right now.
Yeah, I'm one of those people that really thought that Phil should be disqualified for doing what he did, but yeah, it was just a really stupid thing that Phil did. I know why he did it. He said it in the media on why he did it, and it was just one of those things where you don't see that often. It was, for me, it was the first time seeing it since John Daly, I think back in like '98 at the PGA, I believe it was. But yeah, it's just one of those things where you look at it and it's like, okay, is it a true stroke penalty or is there something more and you have to DQ the guy? I think because it was Phil that did it, he only got the 2 strokes. I think, and a lot of people think that if it was like a no-name person that have done it, then that person might have been disqualified, but that's just my opinion. Overall, yeah, it was a good U.S. Open to watch. Just your usual controversies over the weekend with the weather and obviously with Phil, and from there, yeah, it's just one of those tournaments you look forward every year. And congrats to Brooks on winning back-to-back, first time in like 30 years on that to happen. So yeah, we're just trying to recover from our losses last weekend.
Yeah, there was a lot of guys missing the cut, a lot of big names. And speaking of big names, I mean, this week it's fairly a decent size, field. We have some big names up top. We have a couple of players over, double digits. I don't feel like there's anyone mispriced here either. There wasn't anyone that kind of stood out where I go, oh, he's too cheap or he's too expensive. I feel like it's a pretty solid price field here.
Yes, the only interesting part that I found was Jason Day being less than 10,000, and Koepka, after winning the U.S. Open, he's up there, the second highest price guy. Other than that, it's pretty solid. As for me, you just kind of have to pay. We're at the top for Thomas. We saw it last week where Dustin Johnson was the top guy, and not too many people actually play him. I think he was like an average around 20%, and in some cases, maybe less than 20 overall. But I mean, if you look at Thomas's record recently, like since last year's Bridgestone, basically, that's 20 starts. He has 4 wins, 9 top 10s. I mean, we're talking almost Tiger-esque numbers, ratio wise. Yeah, you just kind of have to look at that and say, how can you not say that he's the guy to beat? It just makes perfect sense just to start with him and go from there.
Yeah, I'm with you. Like, we were talking about the top guys, over 10K, and we'll link, kind of Day and Casey into this as well. But, Koepka, surprised to see him here at all, first of all, to start. And you and I were talking about McIlroy and Spieth, and these are guys, it just feels like at this point, if you're playing multiple lineups and you're trying to get a week where they actually hit, that's fine. But, it's Thomas and Reed for me in this range that I just feel the most consistent with. And I kind of rather just work them into lineups over everyone else.
Yeah, I'm with you as well. To me, it feels almost a no-brainer to pick your 2 favorites up here. And same as you, I like both Thomas and Patrick Reed. Reed recently, like since winning the Masters, like he's been playing very well. Like he finished fourth last week, and then in between there, he finished eighth at the Wells Fargo, played okay at the Players. So there's really no reason to fade Patrick Reed. I don't mind starting your cash lineup with Reed at all. I think Thomas might be your tournament guy, just because of what we saw last week with DJ, with the ownership, and then yeah, I think a lot of people will go to Paul Casey. So I'm just going to have to take a stance and fade Casey this week.
And what do you mentioned Day, being surprised that he's a little bit below. Are you on him at all here? Just, we were talking as well. I'm not taking the U.S. Open finish for anyone in heavy consideration this past week, just because of how tough the conditions were and how tough the course played. So I don't care the fact that Day missed the U.S. Open cut. I don't mind that.
Yeah, even though I said that he's a little cheaper than normal, I think I'd rather just pay up for Patrick Reed, just because I feel more comfortable with Reed than with Day. And then after Day, Casey, yeah, I really, really like Webb Simpson here. I mean, he's made his last three cuts here. Out of those three, 2 top 10s. So I think after Reed, I'm just going to go right down to Simpson and just fade the guys in between.
Well, I kind of went Leishman in this spot at 9,300. I think he's an interesting name that's a little bit cheaper. Guy who, didn't play well last week, but still at least made the cut. I know he's had a couple rough tournaments in a while, but I think he's an interesting GPP guy to say the least. Yeah,
it's him and Ryan Moore that I'm basically head scratching right now. One of the stats that I'm looking at this week is actually strokes gained putting a little bit. I don't normally look at putting every week, but it looks like on this course you need good putters. And as of right now, I mean, Leishman's the guy who's been putting more consistently than Ryan Moore, but it feels that Ryan Moore has been playing a lot better than Leishman overall. They both have good course history here, so I think it comes down to ownership for me, and I want to say more people will go to Moore, but I'm not sure just yet. For me personally, as of right now, if I had to choose, I'll pick Moore, just because he's more consistent overall. And Leishman's, I think Leishman might be a good tournament play, if anything. His off the tee stats scare me a little bit, but yeah, I don't mind that at all.
I don't either. What are your thoughts on Berger here? Berger coming off a solid Open, T6, made a run on Saturday. Played really well, and I think he's a little too cheap. I mean, he may be a little too cheap, a guy that I could see maybe being in that 9K range, and he's a little bit below at 8,900.
So, yeah, I kind of have to fade Berger. I think everyone saw what Berger did at the U.S. Open. And then he came second here last year, finished fifth the year before. You're going to laugh, but I think I'm going to pivot off of him and go straight to Bubba Watson.
Well, excuse me, sir. Go ahead. You can explain that one to me.
I mean, he's better off the tee than Berger right now. He's a better DraftKings scorer than Berger. And then, yeah, everything else, they're pretty much equal. But I think because Bubba has won here before, and Bubba won twice already this year, the match play, and then It was like the Genesis Open, I think it was. Um, so with that said, I think Bubba at 88, it's a little scary, but I might play him in cash this week.
I mean, when you look at this range, it's not like there's a ton of safety options. I mean, we've seen a couple guys kind of start to fall off a little bit. I don't. It's not like there's a lot of names that we're just kind of really looking to plug in. You do have like guys like Charlie Hoffman, Xander, Horschel, Cantlay. Like you have these names here that are playable, but for me, I mean, these are guys who we've been talking about more so in GPPs over the last handful of weeks rather than playing in cash names.
Yeah, I think a lot of people might be talking up Cantlay a lot. I guess his odds have been dropping. I bet him already at 40-1, I believe, and then I think they're now around 30 or so as of right now. But I mean, if you look at his stats, besides putting, which is pretty much average or maybe just below average to the field, he's virtually in the top 30 in the field for every other stat that I'm looking at for Cantlay. So, yeah, his course history here is not the greatest, but I think at 8,400, I'm just going to take a stab at Cantlay and maybe out of 5 lineups, maybe put him in 1 or 2 and see what happens with there. Hoffman, I don't mind for cash at all. And I'm just going to have to fade Sander for ownership. I think a lot of people will play him. And then Horschel, there's just something a little off with Horschel for me. So I think Cantlay for sure. And then it's 50-50 for me right now for Hoffman.
Looking down a little bit more, I think Zach Johnson, he's always a pretty stable cash game play. I think you can feel pretty comfortable with him at 8,200. But I do want to get your thoughts on Harman, who's looked a little bit better these last 2 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, Harman has decent course history here. Harman finished third back in 2015. I mean, if you look at his stats, I mean, he's top 30 in the field for putting and for proximity. So I don't mind Harman at all for tournaments. And then, like you said, for his sack, he's Mr. Consistent, almost like a Matt Kuchar in a way. He'll just give you a make cut and maybe finish inside the top 50 to get those placement points on DK. And then that's pretty much it for sack. Yeah, there's really not too much here in the low 8,000s that I like.
Digging below, anyone you like before we get to Griot here?
The one guy that I was looking at a little bit was Jamie Lovemark. He seems to be coming around a little bit. If you look at his stats, I mean, he's top 20 in the field for DK scoring. He's 23rd in the field for off the tee. So I don't mind that at all with Lovemark being at 7,800. He made the cut here last year, finished towards the bottom, but I think he's playing a lot better recently. So with people going to like Luke List and Keegan Bradley, I think Lovemark might be a good pivot option for tournaments.
This is where I feel like we start to kind of thin out, and I think that's why one of the reasons why I like starting with like a Patrick Reed and not shooting myself all the way, because digging down, there's not a ton of guys that I like as far as value goes.
Yeah, when you look at the mid $7,000 range, it's virtually a who's who for guys that are in here. Basically, all the guys that the DFS people love to play. Grillo is one of those guys. I mean, he's in the top 10, virtually like top 10 in the field, and virtually all the stats that I'm looking at for this week. it just seems a matter of time that he's going to win, and I just don't want to miss that boat at all. And then you got Brandon Steele down here, um, who's who did okay at the U.S. Open. He faltered off on Sunday, but like you said, I'm just not going to look at what happened at the U.S. Open. That is just 1 week where you'll get really tough conditions, and it's almost, yeah, you just have to pick your poison to that week and hope for the best. But I really like Steele. I mean, he's sixth in the field for off the tee, and he's, other than putting, he's pretty much decent all around. So for cash, I don't mind that at all. And then I think a lot of people are talking up CT Pan this week for betting and for DraftKings. I think I'm going to fade him on DraftKings. I think he's going to be a little too popular. But for betting wise, like, he was 90-1 at the start, so I put some money on him. And then after that, yeah, I like Austin Cook as a nice pivot option for CT Pan. Top 30 in the field for both off the tee and par 4 scoring, and he's pretty much average for the other stats that I'm looking at. So I think Cook is a really nice pivot play for tournaments.
Adam Hadwin, interesting, last couple of days. If you play DraftKings hockey, he put up a very solid score of 4.5. I don't even care about it. I just had to bring up his score this week.
Yeah, there's definitely something wrong with Hadwin. Like, there was that one tournament where he WD'd earlier this year with an injury. I'm not sure what that was, but it just seems that Hadwin's been somewhat off. I mean, he's still playing okay. He's top 20 in the field for approach the green as of right now. So you can take a flyer there with Hadwin, but I'm just going to have to start fading him and see what's going on. For the guy of his talent to be where he is right now is a little scary to watch, and I don't know. I don't know what's happening with him. He might not do so well for the rest of the year the way he looks.
Yeah, the problem is there's a lot of guys in recent form that I just don't love in this range. I think Vegas is interesting at 7,400. I don't mind using him this week. He's a guy who's been pretty consistent. He made the cut last week. His last missed cut was at the Valero, but overall, he's been a guy you can at least trust. And I feel like 7,400 is a reasonable price, especially when you get to this range of options.
Yeah, I feel like he'll be a nice tournament option, like a good pivot play. He's made the cut here a couple times, so he knows the course. Stats-wise, he's basically maybe just around average, below average in the field. I think a lot of people will go to Streelman a little bit, and possibly Chesson Hadley, who, again, missed the cut last week at the U.S. Open, but I'm not going to look at that. He is still a good ball striker. He's in the top 20 in the field for basically 4 or 5 of the stats that I'm looking at this week. And then after Hadley, I'm going to look at Torrey Merritt a little bit. He finished top 10 here last year. He's 8th in the field for par 4 scoring. So I don't mind pivoting to Torrey Merritt at 7,300 with a top 10 upside there.
Anyone else in this lower sevens that you like? There's a couple of names I feel like we've talked about, recently. Kevin Tway. Ches Reeby's a guy who's kind of boomer bust. Like, there's a couple of names down here. I know you have a couple of guys below 7K that you want to talk about, but anything that stand out here?
I mean, going back to Joel Dahlman kind of makes sense a little bit. Like he made the cut here last year, so that's a plus. And then if you look at his recent form, yeah, he missed the cut at the St. Jude, but I I feel that that's because everyone was on him, and that's just bound to happen when one guy that's like below 7,500 who gets popular. Uh, Something bad is going to happen there. But outside of St. Jude, I mean, three top 20s in a row there. So yeah, at 7,200, I don't mind. I don't mind going back to Joel on that one. Um, Outside of him, I really want to play Rory Sabatini, just the way he's been playing this year, but just really not good course history at all. I mean, two missed cuts. I think he's had, and then yeah, like a top 60 finish back in like what was it, 2016. So I may take a stab at Sabatini, but as of right now, I kind of like Joel Dahman down here at 72.
And the below 7K guys you talk about, you look at Abraham Answer, guy 6,800, and you don't even you write him up in cash here.
Yeah, I mean, I think the reason why I like Answer in cash is that he's actually played here before. Back in 2016, he made the cut, finished in the top 60. So again, that's a plus for a guy that's less than 7,000. All you want him to do is make the cut there. And if you look at his stats, I mean, he's pretty much average, maybe just above average for like all around type stuff. His best stat is actually off the tee, which is 19th in the field. So with that in mind, and then with I mean, yeah, he had a top 10 at the Shell Houston Open recently. So he has that upside as well. So I don't mind him in cash at all, especially if you're going to start with someone like Patrick Reed or even Justin Thomas and cash. You're going to have to go and find someone below 7,000 to make that lineup.
And you're also looking, Sam Ryder's the guy that you're taking a look at in GPPs. What do you like about him here?
Yeah, you know what? Going back to the Shell Houston Open, Ryder finished fifth that week, and outside of that, I mean, it's been hit or miss, like basically a miscut or barely a top 50 finish. But that's pretty much what a guy you're looking into down here. However, he is getting opportunities for looks at birdies. He's in the top 20 in the field for proximity. So with that and with all the other stats, just like Answer, he's pretty much average all around. So for those two guys with little course history to no course history, I don't mind taking a stab with them and just sort of using those two guys as my sixth player and just pick the other five.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think when it comes down to it, it's going to be kind of a narrow field in terms of how your lineup construction is. Is that how things are going for you?
Yeah, that's been pretty much my strategy for the last 2 months or so. Just really picking one or two guys that I like below 7,000, and from there, just using them as a good anchor for your other five golfers. And I mean, I've been pretty solid, I think, the last 2 months. Recently, not so with the U.S. Open with the Tiger and Shane Lowry missing the cut, but outside of that, I think the process that I put in for this year has been pretty solid, and there's no way for me to go away from that and use that again this week.
Who do you got winning here?
I think I said Grillo is my dark horse, being below 8,000. At the top, yeah, I think Thomas is going to get his fifth win since the PGA. So if you look at his stretch, he's basically in a slump, I guess, in a way, because between his 2 wins, it was like only 5 starts, and this is his 7th start, I think, with before his last win. So maybe this week's the week for him to get back in the winner's circle.
Yeah, last win for him was Honda Classic.
Yeah, so in a way, he's still sort of in a mini slump if you look at the numbers, the way he's been posting. Yeah, I kind of have to pick Thomas at the top here as a winner.
Yeah, I'm with you. It's hard not to pick Thomas here. I think Reed's also another guy to look at. I know you're fading, but I think Berger's an interesting guy to keep an eye on.
I mean, he is trending. I'll give him that. He's been okay for the year, for the most part, and then a good run at the U.S. Open. Yeah, I mean, I won't be surprised to see him winning, but with the popularity that he's getting, I'm just going to have to fade for the week.
Yeah, we know you're too cool for Berger this week.
Nah, he's not for me.
That'll wrap it up for us. You can head over to DaveFantasyCafe.com. Our optimizer is loaded for this week. Also, you can check out Chris's article for cash and GPP. He also recaps his last week's structure and his best lineup. And we'll see you guys next week.